Jaclyn Meloche. Jaclyn is an art historian, curator, and artist. Her current research on the aesthetics of car culture as it relates to gender, race, and sexuality is the subject of an upcoming solo exhibition entitled Cars and Curves, and of the single-authored book Gendering the Art of Auto Aesthetics, Fashion, Cars, and Visual Culture, in progress with Rutgers University Press. She is currently a sessional instructor and adjunct assistant professor with the School of Creative Arts at the University of Windsor.
So full disclosure, we're going to talk about art for half an hour. I'm an art historian and an artist, and I am interested in sports and cars as depicted in visual arts, and 20th century predominantly, 21st century. So I'm coming to baseball from a different angle, but it'll be fun, I promise. So Jelani Morgan is the artist who I'm going to focus on in today's paper, and also who I wrote about in the article for the journal. So Jelani Morgan is a Toronto-based photographer and a so-called visual historian celebrated for his contributions to editorial and documentary photography, both nationally and internationally. His work explores visual representation and identity politics within a Black Canadian context. A professional and commissioned photographer, his subjects include portraiture, current events, architecture, the politics of race in Toronto, as well as Toronto's music scene. His work has been published in Maclean's Magazine, Black Lives Matter Toronto, the National Film Board of Canada. He's been commissioned by Nike and Converse. And his work has appeared in the Art Gallery of Ontario in Toronto, the Art Gallery of Windsor, well, formerly the Art Gallery of Windsor, now AWE, Art Windsor Essex, as well as Toronto's Contact Photography Festival. Morgan is originally from Scarborough, Ontario, and he is a passionate Toronto Blue Jays fan. And he's also the photo editor for the West End Phoenix Journal in Toronto. And through that title, he is actually given access to the media press during Toronto Blue Jay games. And he sits in the side dugout with the media. And so that's where a lot of this photography comes from. So these are examples from the series, the MLB series. He's not an artist who titles every work. He really does work serially. So these are some of the early images that I saw of his work. And then I saw this piece, and it stopped me. So this piece, Untitled, from 2021, and this is the piece that's inspired both my presentation today and the paper in the journal. So during the spring of 2021, Jelani Morgan photographed a Black woman with rhinestone-studded blue fingernails preparing to throw the first pitch at a preseason Toronto Blue Jays game. Recalling the diamonds on the baseball field, the woman's sparkling manicure caught my attention. And as much as the photograph at first glance is about baseball and the ritual of the first pitch, it is also about her fingernails, the color of her nails, the rhinestones that decorate them, and what I determine is the potential for political metaphor. So diamonds are made of pure transparent carbon, and they have historically signaled wealth, status, power, commitment, and love in popular culture. But after seeing this photograph, I was prompted to ask, what might diamonds represent on a baseball field? Moreover, how might diamonds inform identity politics in sports? Although traditionally intended to define the boundaries of the game, baseball, it is the argument that diamonds perform a political role by determining whose body matters on the field, as signaled in this photograph, that has inspired both today's presentation and a plug for the journal, my essay in the Journal of Canadian Baseball. So methodologically, I deploy gemology, the science of diamonds, and the science of scintillation, the process of all colors performing cohesively to reflect, refract, and disperse sparkle, to rethink the ways in which diamonds perform in the visual culture of baseball. So through political deconstruction of the diamond, whether in gemology, whether in sports, or in this photograph, what I hope is that it can become possible to rethink the histories of racism and segregation in North American sports consciousness, and subsequently its visual culture. So the game of baseball grew into a North American phenomenon in the 19th century, both as a mythic symbol of national American pride and evidence of cultural assimilation. So in his text, Touching Base, Professional Baseball in American Culture in the Progressive Era, historian Stephen Rice notes that, quote, baseball was most popular among the earliest immigrants, the Anglo-Irish and German immigrants to urban North America. And building on baseball's history as it relates to gender and race, scholar Russell Field argues that baseball also offered a space for acculturation and assimilation in the United States. In keeping with historian George Eisen's notion of ethnic succession, baseball in the 20th century, therefore, would soon become the game of European immigrants who were relocating and making America their home. So in other words, baseball served as a cultural and social space where men of all races could play the game for the purpose of belonging and social acceptance, in addition to establishing a sense of home. Today in the 21st century, baseball continues to represent and arguably embody North American consciousness, despite ongoing evidence of segregation and racism, both on the field and in front offices. For example, according to ESPN.com, quote, MLB lost ground in its racial hiring as its racial hiring rate went from 86.8% in 2021 to 83% in 2022. For gender, hiring off the field, that is, MLB's hiring rate increased from 70.7% in 2021 to 75.3% in 2022. More specifically, sports statistics reveal that the decline of black players still haunts MLB in spite of decades of programs aimed at increasing the percentage of black players. On 2022 opening day, black players accounted for 7.2% of rosters, down from 7.6% in 2021. This is the lowest percentage since the racial and gender report card data started being collected in 1991, when 18% of MLB players were black or African American. Despite what is being reported in the media, sports historians are revealing positive evidence of inclusivity in professional baseball. Its scouting and recruitment is expanding internationally, and players of all skin colors are being recognized for their athletic abilities first. According to historian Rob Ruck, quote, perhaps that's because as players of color spread to all corners of the majors, fans throughout Baseball America began having black and Latin stars of their own to cheer on to their club's greater glory. But surely it's also due to the deeply held belief that baseball at its foundation is a democratic game. A meritocracy open to all. As it relates to gender diversity in the MLB, women have started to earn recognition off the field, earning titles on coaching staffs in management, player development, and health and wellness. For example, Sarah Goodrum currently holds the title of Director of Player Development for the Houston Astros, and Kim Ng is the first woman general manager in the league, leading the Miami Marlins. So baseball from the margins. As a former baseball player myself, I played for 15 years. I am a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I love the game of baseball. I love the intensity of the game, the strategy of the game, the contemplative pace of the game, and the personality of the game. Equally important, I love the ways in which baseball as a game, event, and political platform has the potential to represent inclusivity in contemporary sports consciousness. But lastly, I love how through one single image, this photograph of the game, the baseball diamond, an image and shape that has become so deeply embedded within the visual culture of the game, can transform into a timely metaphor for reframing the foundations of identity politics in professional sports. Let's briefly go to the subject of baseball and gender before we come back to this image. So women are recorded playing baseball in college as far back as the 19th century. However, the only opportunity that women have had to play professionally in North America was between 1943 and 1954 in the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League. The league was founded in 1943 by Philip K. Wrigley in hope to maintain baseball ticket sales, as well as appease fans during World War II. During the league's 11-year run, more than 600 women from across Canada and the United States played in front of nearly 1 million fans. Originally a league comprising 4 teams, it grew to include as many as 10 teams, including the Grand Rapids Chicks, the Chicago Colleens, the Rockford Peaches, and the Fort Wayne Daisies, to name a few. The league dissolved in 1954 due to financial problems and waning attendance. Since the mid-50s, Canadian women baseball players yearning to play professionally have been ushered into competitive softball leagues, such as the Canadian Seniors Women's National Softball Team. Since the 1970s, the Canadian women's top-ranking team has competed around the world in the International Softball Federation, the ISF, Women's World Championships, World Cups, Pan Am Games, and the Olympics, winning many medals, including a bronze medal at the 2020 Summer Olympics in Tokyo. While softball is distinctively different from baseball as a sport, Canadian women have only have softball as a competitive and professional alternative. So in keeping with critical race scholar Janelle Joseph, who writes that sport provides a central stage to both reiterate and challenge gender and racial scripts, I reference the history of women in baseball, not only because, like I said, I played the sport for 15 years, from the ages of 6 to 18, but because I am a fan of the game. Also, let's not forget that one of the subjects in this photograph is in fact a woman. The second subject in this image, of course, her rhinestone bedazzled blue fingernails gripping a baseball. So I'm talking about the diamond. What is a diamond? In baseball, the term diamond refers to a shape, a boundary, and arguably a roadmap for running the bases and scoring runs. While each are different in shape and size, they all recall the form and power of the diamond, that is, the diamond, the gem. On a baseball field, there are 3 diamonds specifically. The diamond shape of the home plate, the diamond shape of the infield, and the diamond boundary of the outfield. So the diamond shape of home plate, where a batter hits the ball, this recalls the side profile of what is called the Old European cut gem, that consists of a flat top, often referred to as a table, with side crown angles on either side that come together in a pavilion angle. The infield shape of the baseball field, which connects all 3 bases to home plate, resembles the pointed cut diamond, or what some might refer to as the square on the diagonal. The last 2 diamonds, which appear to echo one another, frame the outfield, where players in the positions of left, center, and right field play. While different in size, they recall the buff top cut diamond, whose rounded top comes together into a pointed pavilion angle highlighting home plate. Whether coincidental or intentional, it is incredibly powerful how each diamond cut parallels the function of diamonds on a baseball field. In the context of jewelry, the cut of a diamond responds to its setting, monetary value, and desired aesthetics. On a baseball field, each diamond shape relates to a player's role on the field, their responsibilities within the game, and arguably their political status on the team. Or rather, what I am arguing is how the player's body exemplifies social and political acceptance in the sport. But what is a diamond? Perhaps a lesser known fact about the diamond, the gem, is that it requires the dispersion of various light sources, contrasting shadows, and the colors of the spectrum, also known as the colors of the rainbow, to fully sparkle. According to gemology, once light hits that top table, the flat surface of the stone, it immediately begins to travel throughout the interior mass, bouncing from one mirrored facet to another, thus creating that sparkle. But I want to take an opportunity to sort of expand on the diamond, and again, we'll bring it back to baseball. Let us not forget the dark and painful history of what American journalist Erin Baker names the blood diamond in her essay of the same name published in Time magazine. Not only the inherent racism embedded within historical and contemporary sports consciousness, West African blood diamond mines have been perpetuating illegal and unethical diamond trading since before the civil wars of the 1990s and early 2000s. Moreover, they have been exploiting thousands of men, women, and children, forcing them to work in unimaginable conditions for very little money. The diamond industry, an $80 billion industry and market, sources more than half of its diamonds from West African regions. By selling these diamonds to illegal insurgencies to finance and promote guerrilla warfare, as well as political corruption, the diamonds once cultivated for their beauty and sparkle have become politically and metaphorically bloodstained by their symbolism for exploitation and corruption. In 2003, the Kimberley Process Certification Scheme was developed by the United Nations General Assembly resolution to prevent blood diamonds from being sold to mainstream markets for the purposes of supporting violence and exploitation in West Africa. From a capital perspective, the latter has been focused on preventing the dispersion of funds to unethical organizations affiliated with the diamond industry. While its intentions are honorable, the certification process has not yet addressed the ways in which blood diamond mines exploit the lives and bodies of thousands of black miners in West Africa, nor has it changed how black people are perceived in society because they continue to politically and culturally echo exclusionary labor models. In keeping with the ways in which the Kimberley process has taken 2 steps forward yet 1 step back, so has baseball's move towards inclusivity been a complicated and slow process. Through a socio-political lens, it has been argued that sports, whether baseball, basketball, or hockey, represent the social and political ideologies of a generation. In their connections to the histories of patriarchy, segregation, and racism in society, sports can offer a glimpse into the makeup of society. For example, baseball historically was a space where racial segregation was practiced and perpetuated. Black baseball players were not permitted to play the game alongside white players, thus embedding racial discrimination in society onto the field. By the 1930s, the rise of minor league black baseball, known as the Negro Leagues, in cities such as Chicago, Washington, D.C., and St. Louis, had started to stretch southward into the Caribbean, thus hinting at the beginnings of the game's diversification. In America, black baseball teams were only ever invited to play against white baseball teams for practice or capital. The MLB would rent their ballparks to black baseball teams for profit. Nonetheless, baseball as a space for community and acculturation offered Black teams more than the opportunity to play the game. Baseball became a space for national integration. So the future of the game. Historically celebrated as a symbol for American nationalism, baseball, according to Rob Ruck, has been slow to embrace the notion that all bodies matter, whether in minor leagues or professional leagues. In fact, he notes in his research that notions of diversity in the game are recent ones. Quote, baseball's future as an international game, one free of racial constraint, could scarcely have been imagined in the early 1900s. But there it was on display in Havana, Cuba. That was not the case in the United States, where the backlash to Reconstruction had forced African Americans out of Major League Baseball by the 1890s. Racial divisions in the United States grew even fiercer during the new century. By comparison, Cuba became a showcase for multiracial international play, end quote. Building on Ruck's research about baseball's color lines and their historical impact on the game, Russell Field, in his chapter entitled Sport and the Canadian Immigrant, suggests that baseball provided a performative platform for cultural and social integration, meaning that through the sport, non-American players could acculturate into their new home city. The concept that the baseball diamond thus performs, as well as establishes new boundaries for contemplating citizenship and belonging in sports, therefore highlights the inherent power of the diamond. Whether set in a piece of jewelry or framed on a baseball field, diamonds embody power. Diamonds have the ability to perform the body. Diamonds can aestheticize the body, qualify the body, as well as determine a body's social and cultural worth, whether in society or in baseball. So recalling the histories of racial politics in baseball, Jelani Morgan, whose photograph of a Black woman throwing a first pitch inspired my paper today, asks his viewers to question the effects of representation, or lack thereof, on the field, in the dugout, and in the visual culture of the game. A lover of the sport, Morgan too grew up playing baseball, but his experience in Little League taught him that the lines of the diamonds on the fields still parallel the racial barriers perpetuated in contemporary society. Drawing from these learnings, his experiences, Morgan's series entitled 9 Bats, and I have a few images from that series to share, recalls the loneliness of racial otherness on the baseball field. In the series, Devon, a young Black baseball player dressed up in uniform, plays the game alone at Scarborough Village Park, the very field that Morgan played on in his youth. Whether depicted winding up on the pitcher's mound, ready to bat off of a tee, running the bases, or sitting on the field, Devon tells the story of a young Black boy excited by the game of baseball, yet filled with solitude. Baseball is a team sport, but Devon's team is a team of one, himself. And Devon, I will say, is also the artist's nephew. Inside the lines of this Scarborough diamond, Devon's experience of baseball reflects the sport's difficult histories of segregation and racism. Yet the artist's interpretation of baseball shifts lenses when reflecting a Black woman preparing to throw the first pitch. In an image that breaks the gender and color lines of the diamond, baseball is no longer framed through memory, but rather through hope, opportunity, and optimism for its future. Therefore, in the spirit of a metaphor, the diamond becomes a timely symbol through which to both question the histories of the game, as well as introduce new narratives on the field, in the dugout, the clubhouse, and the front offices. Thank you.
I've seen Morgan's images of Jay's games. Maybe it was the West End Phoenix or somewhere in the blog.
Probably, yeah.
Put them next to images of Raptors games and how how diverse the crowd was there versus, because in those images, it's often a single black person or a black family
Yeah.
isolated, they're surrounded by white faces. Is that deliberate? You think they're trying to show the fact that as Canada gets more diverse, baseball might have a problem if they're not attracting more
Maybe.
crowds?
It could be strategic. It could also, Jelani also thinks of photography, he's not trying to set the stage, he's trying to document. So he's responding to the audience, to the
Yeah.
crowd. So, now was the Raptors photograph also one of his?
No.
No, okay. So that's an interesting parallel that, you know, through editorial would
Yeah.
have been, that narrative would have been created. Whether that was intentional by the artist, I don't know that it would be, but still interesting, because I know he is a Raptors fan too, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you should try going to a CFL game. I went to my first one 15 or 20 years a couple of weeks ago, and the crowd was so one-dimensional. And then I went to the Raptors
I grew up
game.
with families, my
Yeah.
parents had season tickets
Yeah.
to the Ottawa, well, Rough Riders and Red Black, so, yeah.
And you know, as much as you say the art looks forward with that photo, I think almost all of us here would agree Major League Baseball has done a horrible job
Oh, yeah.
with black community, black players. They've lost the generation of basketball.
Well, as the
and football,
statistics
yeah.
show, the percentages have lowered just in the last
Yeah,
couple of
it's,
years.
and a lot of the Toronto Blue Jays went through Vancouver, and you know, they have tons of Dominican players, and we visited a couple African American players, one from Houston, one from Jacksonville. They love Vancouver and you know the difference in racial attitudes, but you know you still saw a difference in how they were treated versus the white players.
Oh, absolutely.
From the management, and you know, it was just you know how many you know small, short, white center fielders played the game the right way. I heard that, you know, and I just wanted to cringe when I heard it.
When I saw, you know, by no means is this image indicative of,
Yeah.
you know,
It's hope rather than.
it's hope.
Yeah.
And when I saw, you know, the opportunity to parallel the diamond, which to me, all of a sudden, just came in as a metaphor that we could expand on all these other histories, seemed to parallel.
Well, the other thing, you know, you mentioned, it's a rhinestone diamond too. It's not even.
It's not even a real, it's a
Not even a real
simulant.
diamond,
It's a
yeah.
simulant.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I did want to make that
Yeah,
distinction, which, you know, that's a whole other art section in this paper.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
I had the opportunity to speak with Pat Gillick during one of the Sabre conferences, and he said something that I thought was astounding. I don't think he meant it as racial or racist, but I asked him about some outfielders that were prospects for the Blue Jays, and he commented that they just can't hit. And then he added, outfielders who are fast and can go get the ball are a dime a dozen, implying that they can't throw or hit. I thought that was very telling. Especially considering baseball salaries, a dime a dozen is pretty good.
Yeah.
The Blue Jays now have, I think one of their third-round picks is from the greater Toronto or Mississauga Center. Deshaun Brown, who's African Canadian, is doing quite well. Advanced to high and all this year. So, you know, baseball in a lot of places, Vancouver, Toronto, is actually prospering with families that go, I don't want my kid to have their head smashed in hockey or a cause, but how that translates into major league reflecting diversity is they're sort of going in opposite
Opposite.
directions.